Thanks, Ola, and thank you, AMSI, for organising this. It's a pleasure to be able to speak. This is a bit of a change of direction. You've been hearing a lot of computational maths and computational science. This is where the rubber hits the road, and this is the infrastructure side of it. And I'm talking about Australia's national research infrastructure, where the chief scientist is currently running a road mapping process. Australia has a number of major facilities, and these are all getting on and a need to make them more competitive. High performance computing provides a 4 to 6 year advantage over what's available in the commodity marketplace. There is this sort of belief that the cloud will take over everything. Well, the cloud is not always cheaper, and the cloud certainly doesn't provide performance advantages. And so this is about what HPC, and I use the word C in the most generic way, referring to both computing and data. It's a ubiquitous technology on which almost all of science and technology research and innovation depends. And for the past decade or so, it's been recognised that to outcompute is to outcompete. It's a phrase that came out of the US Council for Competition about 2009. If you look at around the world, you see reports from the IDC, for example, saying that 97% of US industry could not survive or be competitive without access to it. When the Cameron government came into power in 2010, they had a review of their computational capacity, and there was deep concern about losing touch. In other words, having the whole manufacturing industry run into the ground by the developments in Europe. You see massive investments in the infrastructure in the United States, China, Japan, the European Union and the United Kingdom. In the world, the Department of Energy in the United States drives the entire agenda, the hardware and the software agenda, and you see essentially Obama's moonshot in July of last year representing a major investment to get the US to the Richter scale first. The reason being to maintain its technological advantage over the rest of the world, and in particular China. And so you see these gigantic investments that have taken place in recent years, and some of these are in production now, some will come into production in the next couple of years. In the Australian context, we have this National Research Infrastructure Roadmap, and we're looking at a future national computational system for Australia. And as I'll explain to you, it's about the nexus of high performance computing, simulation in other words, and big data, that is to say data intensive work. There's a need for major investments in the ecosystem of skills. That is what is really missing aside from competitive infrastructure, and that's in other words the computational sciences, and hence I'm very pleased to be able to say a few words here. And to make the case to government, it's all about maximising research on investment. Very briefly, and I speak in the context of NCI because that's what I know best, we service almost every discipline, and we serve all research from pure through strategic, applied and industry. So we start out with the enabling sciences, centres of excellence, and then we work up through where the agencies are, the strategic and the applied. We land in an industry space, and this little example here, for example, is one where intellectual property from ANU and UNSW set up a startup. After a period of 7 or 8 years, it was sold off to a US multinational for about $76 million. There's probably the Australian government would like to see some more examples of that, and that is an example of something which started out life in computational science and wouldn't have got a foothold without the major investments. Now, I won't go through these one by one, but you see astronomy, big data, computational simulation of turbulent combustion for biofuels, ocean modelling. My colleague Marshall Ward will probably speak about that tomorrow, and the work we've put in to improve the scaling of ocean models from 1,000 up to 9,000 cores. And then we go into the life sciences, which is a growing area. That is very data centric. And then into the chemistry and materials area, improving the performance of the photosynthesis by controlling the efficiency of the enzyme that controls that, and if that can be done, then greater food security. Materials properties will improve the efficiency of solar cells. Basin geodynamics for industry, that's an ARC, industry-centred example. The one up the top here is the work we do with the agency, CSIRO and the Bureau of Met. NCI is in fact the Bureau of Meteorology's development machine. The next generation weather models and the next generation of seasonal prediction is being worked on. With Geoscience Australia, we're very much into the space of Earth observation and geophysics. We hold and develop with GA and CSIRO the Australian Geoscience Data Cube. It's a 1 petabyte highly processed archive of a database of 35 years of the Landsat imagery. And then most recently we're now hosting the Southeast Asian Pacific Regional Hub of the European Union Copernicus Sentinel. And the last one there is the one I mentioned. So just looking briefly at the infrastructure, there are 3 petascale facilities available in research. NCI's Ranger was commissioned in 2012. It has a peak performance of slightly over a petaflop, sustained performance of about 1.6 million spec units, and it's a big machine. It's about 57,500 cores. Slightly newer is Magnus, the Causey Centre, another NCRIS funded facility, a slightly higher peak facility and a little bit lower sustained performance. It is a smaller machine with about 35,000 cores. And there's the VLSCI machine, which is Victorian government funded. That's been in operation since June 2012, and that's likely to be shut down at the end of this year. And then other peak systems are not either openly accessible or necessarily in the research base. There's the Bureau's new machine, and that'll be a gigantic thing at about 6 petaflops total when it reaches full size in 2018. The CSIRO has a number of mid-range machines, and then there's a number of other facilities around the country. Flashlight in Queensland, Massive is attached to the synchrotron at Monash University, and then various small machines, plus the Nectar Cloud. And so let me just touch on where NCI is today and how we came to be in existence. We've been in existence for nearly 30 years. It'll be 30 years next year. The first 13 of which were under as AMU supercomputing facility. The next 7 as the first of the first national services under the brand of APAC, and since 2007 under the brand of NCI. The transformative change for NCI, where compute met data, came in 2009 when the Australian government announced that it was going to fund petascale computing infrastructure in 2 places, one at NCI and one in CSIRO, the Causey Centre in Perth. And there was, in our case, $50 million for the infrastructure and nothing for current operations. And so that then starts your head scratching, and you set about constructing a collaboration that values the service sufficiently to pay for it. And we eventually put together the first $8 million, and we've gradually driven that up to 12 million, and we get about $5 to $6 million a year out of the Australian government through NCRIS, making an $18 million recurrent operational budget. But what happened was when the science agencies came through the door, that's the Bureau, CSIRO and Geoscience Australia, they brought their big data interests at the same time as they brought their simulation interests. And so that set us on a pathway which has enabled us to be in the international vanguard of the confluence of computation and data. Not bringing up the rear, but having been forced into it from early on, about 2011-12. And that's where we are now. And so what we are is Australia's most highly integrated high-performance infrastructure, a petaflop class supercomputer, a private cloud, also a supercomputer class but somewhat smaller, for orchestrating the data services, and Australia's highest performance storage systems that contain some of their largest open access collections, the bulk of them in the environmental space, but a growing amount in the life sciences. Plus an internationally renowned support team. And so what we do is, our mission is world-class high-end computing services for Australian research and innovation. We enable high-impact research that matters, that informs policies. How we put all this together is that we're very research and outcome driven. Not build it and they will come, but the infrastructure and the service portfolio has emerged out of other people's research goals. And that has come through deep engagement, so it's been a very collaborative, way forward. Our hallmarks are the two words, quality and innovation. If you negate both, that's how you go broke in this game. You go broke quickly if you don't have quality services and people don't want to pay you money. You go broke if you have no innovation and you have no pathway forward. And where this is naturally taking us is the e-research framework, which is underpinning the outcomes of this road mapping exercise. It has recognised the need for aggregation, for research-driven, for accountability, for quality, innovation and the like, and as such, I think what we've been able to achieve, which is a collaboration driving service evolution for collaborative outcomes and research and innovation competitiveness, is a bit of a blueprint for the way forward. Just to show you what it looks like, the total ICT spend in our data centre is somewhere near $50 million over the last 4 years. The data centre itself is purpose-built, $26 million, and this is our current operational cost. We get about $12 million out of the partner organisations, which you can see in this logo chart here, and about $5 to $6 million from NCRIS. So the partner co-investment since 2008 is something of the order of $58 to $59 million, and you can see the NCRIS investments over the other side, principally in infrastructure. So at a quick glance, we serve presently 31 universities, 5 science agencies, 8 ENTIS capabilities, 3 medical research institutes, and a growing industry portfolio. We serve something like 500 projects associated with 4,000 researchers, 1,500 of whom would actually log into the facilities. The access goes 55% into the universities, 44% into the science agencies, and slightly more than 1% are growing into industry. Staff of 60, and probably Australia's best research software library. We spend about $300,000 a year plus all the open source stuff. We have an electricity bill you choose not to jump over. The power consumption at this moment is probably about 1.8 megawatts, and we sort of kit it up to be able to go through to about 4.5. And we have numerous collaborations, and you can both into the research sector, peer organisations, and into industry. Some of those collaborations come about by virtue of our relationships with the science agencies and the computational data-intensive science that we support. In terms of excellence dimensions, then you see something in the order of 200 or more ARC and NH and MRC funded activities. Centres of excellence, projects of all manner, industry activities, and a full range of fellowships. The total value, annualised value, is about $58 million a year. The total value of the grants from 2016 back to when they started is about $270 million. About a third of the recent Academy of Science Fellows are NCI users, and there's about 500 publications a year that would acknowledge the use of the facility in one way or the other. When you come to the national benefits, it's very much in the activities that come out of the science agencies, and very, very data-centric, aside from the Bureau, which is doing the simulation development work for the next generation systems. And that pretty much shows you sort of the distribution of the workloads. Perhaps the life science is a bit underdone. If I chop chemistry in half and stuck half of chemistry on there, that's probably a better representation of the life sciences. So what we are at the moment is that we are a big multi-user facility, and it's very close to saturation. You see here machine running at about 90%. It's a giant game of Tetris to fill a machine like this up, and sometimes the blocks are a bit of bit of the wrong size. Towards the end of last quarter, you saw the queue lengths jump towards the end of up to 2,000. And what you're seeing here is both the increasing use of the machine and its saturation, and also the increasing scalability of the codes. When we first started, though, the average job size would have been around 64 cores. That's to say that 50% of the utilisation use less and 50% use more than that. It's now up to 256. The largest task on the machine that's ever been is somewhere between 20 and 30,000 cores. The ocean model that I think Marshall Ward will talk about can get to 20,000, but works typically around the 9,000 mark. And that's the sort of scale you need to get ambitious science results out when you're working with multiple scales. You know, something the size of an ocean and something the size of eddies, which are only a kilometre or two across, which have to be resolved to understand the energy properties. So where are we going? So that's where NCI is today. Pawsey will be much the same place, but a couple of years later, and we probably need to go a factor of 8 up to deliver. How are we going to get there? By the way, this little graph here shows 30 years worth of supercomputing at ANU. This is Rage, and that's its predecessor Vayu. They're the NCI machines. They're the APAC machines. They're the three that were at the ANU. This one here, if you want to, is 1992, and it is the performance of half an iPad 2. So there's things have moved. So let's now show you what the next generation of infrastructure starts to look like. So that's the top 500 list in November 2015. And when you look at the top 10, only 3 of them have conventional processors in them. The other 7 have either accelerators or specialist hardware. And the use of accelerator and specialist hardware technology is necessary to essentially maintain Moore's law of growth with feasible power and feasible cost. So also on here, you'll see how fast you slip. This is the NCI machine when it first came on. It's the Pawsey machine when it first came on. And we're now down at 86. Pawsey is at presently number 68 in the world. This is an interesting chart, and I'm sorry it's so busy. What I did was I took the top 100 facilities in the world and I grouped them up by country and then looked at the aggregate computing capacity in each country. So for the United States there were 35 facilities and 115 petaflops of performance. For China, 11 facilities and 46. Here is Australia, in the top 100, 2 facilities and slightly more than 2 petaflops. And then the next thing I calculated was the number of teraflops per $1 billion of GDP. And this is fascinating to look at these collection of numbers here. Those 4 countries, which you would say are deeply innovation-driven economies, have a comparable magnitude. You come down to Australia and it's very much less. Australia would like to be a much more innovation-driven economy. And when you look up here, and you know full well that the United Kingdom will be moving closer into this list, and also France and the like. These 2 here are perhaps a bit of outliers, but you can imagine Saudi Arabia has aspirations to transform its economy as well. Then you see that there's a need that if you're not choosing to have competitive high-performance infrastructure, then you're going to struggle in the innovation economy. There's probably one I should mention. This is a matter of interest. Number 17 is not on that list. It's an Australian machine. It's a tax fraud. It's the Bitcoin. So, what are the key trends and the science drivers going forward? Well, model precision and fidelity is requiring increasingly large-scale computation. People are wanting to add more physics into their model. They're wanting to do multi-physics, as we've heard today, on multiple scales. There's going to be ensemble modelling for the stochastic understanding of phenomena. So every time you put more into the model grows in complexity, or ensemble modelling, you're having to run the task more often to get a statistical understanding. That is growing it. The technology changes. The standard CPU no longer has it in terms of, it's still a good general purpose device, but in terms of the amount of computation that you get out of it for a unit of power and for a unit of cost, it's no longer competitive. So you find that the GPU coming out of the games industry is driving the competitiveness in certain fields. Material science benefits particularly. Intel's micro-core architecture, the Xeon Phi, will be good in other fields. The next generation of machines will have to be quite heterogeneous, or alternatively, a massive amount of effort will have to be put into re-engineering the codes. There are big tasks. In fact, probably a lot of numerical analysis libraries will have to be redeveloped. What was developed back in the 1960s with the concept of a von Neumann machine is not going to handle it when you have to be aware of memory location in relation to in the sense that it requires more energy to move a piece of data around than it does to actually compute on it. So there's a need for more effective methods. We have a modest team which has achieved some outstanding results, but the problem is that the team is modest in size. It's modest because we're limited by the budget we have. And so we've had some outstanding examples, which maybe Ben Evans and Marshall Ward will mention. These things being done in the context of optimising the climate and weather suite for Australia and in relationship with BOM and CSIRO, and this one being picked up by the UK Met Office and another by NOAA in America. So let's now look at where we're going, and really we're heading towards the end of the free lunch, and so what we now have, if I take you back here, this is the current machine, that's its immediate predecessor, and now we're going to try and project forward. And if you look at the calculations here, then you find that when we went from the predecessor of the current machine to the current machine, we spent twice as many dollars. We got the peak floating point performance up by a factor of 8, and we got the sustained performance up by a factor of 6. So you can say, righto, we're still doing well. In other words, you spend twice as much money and you get 4 or 6 times as much. But looking at the current machinery and doing it on standard cores, from ranging current machine to what is the next generation, say we spend 3 times the money, then we would get 8 times the floating point performance, but we would only get 3 times the sustainable performance. In other words, this thing is no longer scaling. And so what this says is that you've got to give up on the use of cores exclusively, and you've got to go to a more accelerator-driven architecture that says that expertise and know-how and heterogeneous systems is the way forward. In terms of where we're going then, it's vital that we have investments in people and skills and training. In the past, everything has been a technologically driven investment. In other words, the $50 million for the current thing was money for hard things only, not money for people. And all the people money we've had to generate essentially out of co-investment. Australia needs something, a critical mass of expert staff that creates the most powerful infrastructures. The example is that, we should be looking at something like
We tried to get rid of that 10 years ago.
Tuesday night maintenance.
Oh.
Things like NCSA in America, the Department of Energy Labs, those things there have a couple of hundred people who will be in the area of computational science, probably half looking inwards into new algorithms and better ways to architect the machines, and half looking into the application space. I really think probably the Hartree Centre or the Science and Technologies Facility Council installation of Daresbury is something that Australia has to look at. And increasing system integration. It's deep integration of compute and data. It's not HPC with the data bolted on. That's what we have proven over the last few years. And in recent reports that have come out from the national academies, you can see there that it really is endorsing the directions that we have taken. So that's what the NCI portfolio looks like. Essentially, we have a services and technologies portfolio which provides the entire platform, and that is a very tightly integrated infrastructure in which the supercomputer, the cloud, and all the other computing machinery is tied onto the persistent file systems. This is the supercomputer's own particular file system. There is no need to move data out of the data centre. And we have a research, engagement and initiatives portfolio. My colleague Ben Evans, who follows me, will be probably talking about that. And really that is about raising the ambition of Australian research and innovation through services in high-performance computing and data, virtual environments which include virtual desktops, collections, management and services, and visualisation. It's the special sauce, it's the glue that makes the friction-free services. And so just to summarise, this is what we think Australia needs as a future national computational sciences capability. The national peak facilities under a single governance, a limited number of them, probably NCI and pausing as they are, but under a single governance framework, aggregated to scale, service quality and service innovation. We should aspire to be something like back in the top 20 and 30. It's achievable, but it's probably going to be an investment in the order of 80 to 100 million over 5 years. The present installation of NCI, for example, is 50. And for that to be achievable, it's going to have to be the government's going to have to see the value in it. It's going to have to see the value in doing things for the economy as well as the generation of knowledge. And integration also with commercial cloud for dealing with the lesser tier requirements. Deeply embedded in the national research fabric, in fact driven by it, the converged infrastructure with the tightly integrated compute and data, and this emphasis on skills, education and training. And what we're looking at here is, the re-engineering of codes of national significance, increasing use of data methods. Things like machine learning will be important for genomics and the like. The consultancy capability of the science agencies and industry, a nucleus for a separately funded research capability, and the conversation I was having with Jeff earlier indicated both thinking in the same direction. We need certainly to have a vibrant computational sciences and education program, and certainly something like this under common governance would give leadership for Australian participation and multi-year investments, so as there is some certainty to retain the quality of staff. So I thank you for your time.